I had a call, it was probably about 3 days after I had quit. And this customer it was one of my grandpa's customers. He had called me and said, hey, we have this demo on the schedule. We need to get it, make sure you're going to be there. And I was like, well, I just quit, but we'll make sure that someone's there. And if not, then I'll come myself. And he told me, he said, well, this one's a particular demo, so I want to make sure you're the one doing it, and we'll go through you.
Hey everyone, welcome back to Nailed It. I'm your host, Brandon Jensen, and today's guest is Justin Godfrey, the owner of Faultline Services, a premier demolition, and get this, dumpster rental company. I know it might not sound flashy, but don't judge a book by its cover. Today, Justin pulls back the curtain on his industry and shows us just how insanely lucrative the most unexpected business can be. Trust me, you'll never look at dumpsters the same way again. Let's dive in. This is Nailed It. Well, tell us a little bit. Obviously, I know we've known each other for a while. I know a little bit about your background and your childhood and whatnot. Walk us through how you got to Faultline, how you created it. I know you kind of purchased a dumpster aspect of it, from a different company a number of years back. Walk us through kind of what experiences in childhood, kind of put you on this path. Because construction, for us going in school, I'm a little bit older than you, but it was like, at least for me, it was like, oh yeah, you got to go to college. You got to, it's like, do the white collar. And obviously we're in a blue collar industry.
Yep.
But there's a lot of money to be made and you can be successful if you work hard. But yeah, kind of talk to us. Hey, I grew up here locally and give us a little rundown of your history.
Okay. Yeah. So I grew up in Riverton. I stayed here most of my life, but back to when I was a child. The real thing that really kind of started me on, thinking outside of the box a little bit.
Yeah.
Me and my best friend, when I was in like 5th grade, maybe even 4th grade, we had this idea that we wanted to buy these little mini choppers.
Okay.
And so, our parents didn't just give us anything.
Yeah.
So
mini choppers, like a little helicopter, like a toy, or like an RC helicopter?
No,
or what?
so like, I don't know if you remember pocket bikes. They had those little miniature bullet bikes.
Yeah.
That was like
okay.
Early 2000s, well, later 2000s, I guess.
Yeah.
So we had this idea. We wanted those so we could cruise around the neighborhood instead of riding our bikes everywhere.
Oh yeah, the little like okay, yeah, I know what you're talking about.
Yeah, so we went to the drawing board and we decided, okay, we're gonna do yard work. We're gonna mow people's lawns.
Because those were kind of expensive. What, $300, $400, $500 or something? Probably
if I remember
then?
Right, they were about $500.
Yeah. Okay, so you guys are like, hey, man, we got to make some money and we got to figure out how to do it. So you're like, hey, let's do yard work.
Yep. Yeah, we had, our parents had the mowers, so we utilized that.
They're obviously paying for the gas.
Yep. They paid the gas, so we were kind of,
low overhead.
Yep.
Right?
Yep. We kept it low. But we went knocking doors, made some flyers.
Yeah.
I think when we first started, I think we had 3 people interested. And so we started doing theirs weekly. And then we had multiple that were, oh, hey, come pull our weeds, shovel out our horse stalls. Pretty much anything and everything. We would just do it to make a buck.
Okay. And so down in Riverton, there's a decent amount of horse property. So there was probably, it was a little bit of a mixed bag. It wasn't like, hey, we're just pulling weeds, we're just mowing lawn. You're kind of like, hey, we'll do whatever. Yeah.
No, we did anything. And, whether it was even just moving, garbage to dumpster, even back then.
Yeah.
But we started doing that. And I think it was about after 2 months, right before summer ended, we were able to go, I think it was Pep Boys we got them from.
Okay.
So we went down there, picked them up, and, we kept on going after that too.
So how long did you guys do that? Was that like kind of a few years, or you went through the fall and then it was like you kind of got your bikes and you didn't do it next year? Because you're 5th graders or so. How long did you guys run that little summertime business?
So I think for us together, the whole business partner thing was a little rocky.
Yeah. Because one guy works harder than the other. And
yeah. And then it got literal, because there was a time where, we had an argument, and that's when, we were like 5th grade. We were throwing rocks at each other and
Nice.
decided we were going to do our own thing at that point.
Yeah.
And I don't even know what the argument was, but after that, we started doing our own thing. We were still best friends. And I kept going on, and I did about 4 lawns, and he was doing a couple. And that lasted all the way till I could drive.
Oh, so you did this for a while.
Yeah. So one thing that probably helped me keep going with that is my parents. So they had a deal with us is if we had, say, $3,000 saved up for a car, then they'd match it.
Okay.
So we had some motivation to, put some money away also.
Which is nice, right? I mean, I think when you're little and it's like you're looking at, hey, I want to get a car. I mean, it's like it's almost unattainable, right? When you're talking about thousands of dollars and here you are mowing lawns for, $10 or $15. But if you can double that money, it makes a big impact. You made a note in here that you'd said your parents talked to you about like money and budgeting and things like that. Tell me a little bit about that, because that's obviously from my educational experience. That wasn't, I mean, we weren't really taught those things in school, right? So if you didn't get those things at home, you kind of, you go out into the real world, so to speak, and you don't know shit about shit.
No.
Because you don't know, you don't really know how money works. You don't know how credit works. You don't so tell me a little bit about when did your parents start teaching you guys? Was it really young? Was it, and how do you think that's impacted you?
Yeah, I would say probably, right around there, like 6th grade, 5th grade.
You're starting to make a little bit of money. It's like, hey, this is kind of how it works a little bit.
Yeah, and it worked out great because I actually had a little bit of income, and, my mom she sat down with me and we kind of made, okay, how much money are you bringing in? What are you spending your money on? Just the basics. I wasn't really spending a bunch of money. I was saving most of it. But, it really helped me kind of see the bigger picture of, okay, cool. I love making money because then I get to buy the things I want.
Yeah.
And then among those things, probably later, kind of credit got brought up in the picture. And, obviously if you don't have credit, then you can't buy anything.
Yeah.
Unless you're paying cash. And, I'm a firm believer in utilizing credit.
Yeah. Well, I think credit can help. Obviously there's the Dave Ramseys of the world who kind of say no, no debt. Right. But definitely from a business aspect, you can leverage your credit to, buy additional dumpsters or, whatever that equipment might be, which I think is a huge asset. And it's one of the things that I think has really helped, this country kind of move forward and move faster than, maybe other countries. Where have you kind of used credit with your business, or did you use credit when you kind of bought the dumpster company? And maybe before we get to that, so you're doing this lawn mowing thing till you're 16. So I'm assuming you save up your money, you get your car. What do you start to do at 16? What are you doing for work?
Yeah. So at that time, I was mobile then. So I would go, pretty much anything. I grew up with most of my family members were self-employed.
Okay.
So, they were always willing to have me come help them and, pay me some money. Mostly I liked working with my grandpa. He did demolition.
Okay.
So that's kind of where I tapped into that a little bit. My dad also did remodels, so I'd help him as much as I could. And then my mom also had a daycare facility. So I would go there, do the yard work, pretty much work a solid 3 hours after school every day.
Every day. It's, I hear that, and I did that and worked all my summers when I was probably from about the time I was 10 or 11. We had some neighbors that owned Snow Shack at the time, and I'd go pour the little bottles off. And, and I mean, I loved it because I had money, right? And none of my friends had money. But today you don't, I feel like kids aren't really doing that today a lot, right? It's like, oh, I've got a few classes. Life's a little too rough for me. I need the afternoon to kind of unplug. So you have, remind me, you have a brother?
Yeah. So I have a brother that works with me.
And is it just the two of you?
As far as siblings go?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I have a younger brother.
Okay.
And then I have Jordan, who I claim is my brother. He's my cousin.
Okay.
But, kind of adopted brother.
Okay, nice.
And then I have 2 older sisters.
Okay. So did all of you kind of have the same upbringing with the parents kind of teaching you guys like about budget and finances and things like that? Was it pretty similar for all of you?
From my perspective, I believe so.
Okay.
We were the type of family where every Sunday we'd have a family meeting. If there's conflicts, we'd discuss it.
Okay, very cool.
And kind of, Sundays were kind of a time to unwind, and that's kind of where my parents brought in the financial stuff.
Unplug a little bit, and yeah. I think as I don't have any children. I know you have some kids. Tell me what your experience growing up and how your parents raised you and the budget thing and money and finance. Tell me how that's influenced your relationship with your children, and maybe remind me how old your kids are, because I think they're still pretty young.
Yeah, so I have two daughters.
Okay.
My oldest is 8, and my youngest just turned 6 in December.
Okay. So they're probably starting to get to the age where maybe you're talk about allowances and things like that, and
yeah, quite honestly, they're spoiled. But I still kind of keep money. I openly discuss it with them. Every Friday every other Friday we go to the gas station, pick out some treats, have our movie night. But there's times where I'm like, girls, we can't just go to the gas station. Like, that costs a lot of money.
Yeah.
I was like, if we want to go, for instance, say, okay, we have a Disneyland trip this year, we need to start saving some money for that.
Yeah.
And just kind of making them a little bit aware of it.
Helping them understand, kind of the concept of money.
Yeah. Just last week, my daughter wanted just this little stuffed animal. It was $20 at the grocery store. And personally, I don't like buying them stuffed animals anyways, because they have a ton of them. But I told her, I was like, hey, if you want to spend your money on it, that's fine. I'll buy it, and you have to pay me the cash when we get home.
Yeah.
So she chose to do that and paid me the money.
Gave you the money. And I remember recently listening to something, and the guy was talking about that concept of the kids working, having a little bit of their own money, and the sense of pride that comes from buying something that they want. So anyway, so you kind of do this, you do the lawn mowing thing. Now you're helping, family, friends, they're all kind of self-employed. They've got different things going. What is it that pushed you to, hey, I want to work for myself, or I want to do my own thing, or how, where's that transition to when you started doing, Faultline Services?
Okay. Yeah. So I actually, when I was 18, I moved to Phoenix, Arizona.
Okay.
I kind of went away from the direction of construction. My dad had done it his whole life, and made a great living, but I didn't really want to be in that area.
Yeah.
So I went to a trade school, was a diesel mechanic, graduated that program, and went straight to Colorado and worked about 5 years as a diesel mechanic. And then I think I just got burnt out of going to the same place every day.
Seeing the same thing, and
yep.
It's
same shop, same guys.
Yep, and the same vehicles coming in, and the same problems, and I could see that kind of a little bit of a routine.
Yeah, and when you say same vehicles, I did a lot of diagnostics, and some of them would come in, and I'm like, okay, it's the same problem as the last one, and sure enough, get it out the door within an hour, and kind of just got a little boring, I guess.
Yeah, maybe not super challenging.
Yes.
As well. That makes sense. So you do that for 5 years. You're in Colorado. Where do you go after that? You come back to Utah, or?
Yeah. So I just had moved back to Utah, went to work for another diesel mechanic shop.
Okay. So you're like mid-20s at this time, 25, 26, right in there maybe?
I think I was probably about 24 or so.
24. Okay.
Yeah. And then it came summertime, and I was just like, okay, I'm over this. I talked to my grandpa, and then I went back to work with him doing demolition. And that lasted, I was doing a lot for him, from even still doing mechanics, but It was nice to have a different variety.
A change of pace, change of scenery. And so the company that your grandfather had, it was a big company, a lot of employees. He specialized in demo. Tell me a little bit about that experience.
Yeah, so he did demolition and a little bit of excavation, more on a smaller scale.
Okay.
And, I think at the time he had about 6 employees.
Okay.
And then me, so 7 total. And, he had been doing it as far as I can remember since I was, born. And I worked with him, and it was about 2 years later, I decided that, okay, I needed to step out of that. And so one day I decided, okay, I'm going to quit. And I didn't give him a 2-week notice or anything. I just quit that day and pretty much told him I was done.
How did he respond to that?
On a personal level, it was good. On a business standpoint, though, I could see as a business owner now, I'm like, okay, that kind of sucks.
Left him in the lurch a little bit. Yeah.
Yep. So he was good with it. I walked away, and I didn't know what I was going to do at that time.
Yeah.
So what happened was I quit. I thought I was going to start a dump truck company and just drive a truck the rest of my life.
Okay. Hauling whatever needed to be hauled.
Yep, whatever needed to be hauled. I had the diesel mechanic background.
Yeah.
I already had my CDL. So it just made sense. Okay, I can, buy a $50,000 semi and get to work the next week.
Yeah.
And I had a call, it was probably about 3 days after I had quit. And this customer it was one of my grandpa's customers. He had called me and said, hey, we have this demo on the schedule. We need to get it, make sure you're going to be there. And I was like, well, I just quit, but we'll make sure that someone's there. And if not, then I'll come myself.
Yeah.
And he told me, he said, well, this one's a particular demo, so I want to make sure you're the one doing it, and we'll go through you. So I was a little bit confused, like, okay, what does that mean? Like, do I just go do this job for him, like behind my grandpa's back in a sense?
Yeah.
And I decided to do it, and I went and did the demo, and then work just kind of started falling in my lap for demo.
Because this contractor probably talked to a few other buddies and was like, hey, use this guy for demo. Justin shows up. He gets the job done. So how old are you at this point? Because how long did you work for your grandfather?
I worked for him for, I think it was just under 2 years.
Okay. So now you're just past mid-20s.
Yep, I was about 27 or 28 at that time.
Okay. And are you, at this point, are you married?
Yes. So
okay.
I was married young. I was married in 2015.
Okay.
And so, yeah, there was that whole aspect too of, okay, well, one of us isn't working and we got bills to pay.
Yeah.
And so the work kind of kept flowing in, and it wasn't as busy as I was when I was with my grandpa. And I just kind of kept going with it and slowly started advertising on just Facebook. I did a demo in a storefront in a strip mall.
Yeah.
And it was a tile removal job. So you know how dusty those can be.
Yeah.
And I built this, super fancy enclosure around all the tile in there. It was a baby store. So they had all their car seats, and
so they can't really afford to have dust on all their merchandise that they're trying to sell. That's new.
Yep, exactly. So I set up this dust enclosure. At the time I had one air scrubber and just like 3 rigid vacuums, just some shop vacs, and my brother Jordan, who and we went in there on a Sunday after hours, got the tile done, and the store owner was super pleased with our work. And then our contractor, that was a different contractor, they were thrilled with it. And after that, it kind of just seemed to roll into these tile jobs.
To flow.
Yeah. Removing tile.
And there's these people who advertise kind of the dustless tile removal. What is that system that does that, or how does that work? Is it a specific piece of equipment that people use, or is it literally just kind of what you're talking about, setting up the tent? And because I know, we work with a lot of clients. I know remodels can be painful, right? Because your life is disrupted. You are dealing with a construction site, which is inevitably dusty, right? More than not, the most dusty parts are the demo and then sheetrock.
Yeah.
And after that, there's the the dust is a lot less. But tell me, is there specialty equipment for demo? Is there special saws, or how do you guys kind of try to do this like dustless removal stuff?
Yeah, so they have a whole assortment of attachments for, even sawzalls, pretty much everything you can imagine
To capture the dust
now. I started out with a Hilti saw, and it had a attachment for the vacuum. So we used that, and we had the chipping hammers. We had an attachment that went right down by the bit and didn't quite enclose the whole bit, but just kind of went around it. And that eliminates, most of it right there. And then you have the air scrubbers, which, with that HEPA filter, it traps particles of like 2 microns. And so it does a great job, just the air scrubber alone.
Because that's what, I remember the first time we worked with you guys, and it was really, really dust free. And I remember the clients came in and they were like, wow, this is like, I feel like there should be all this dust in the air. And it does definitely make a huge difference. And so, for homeowners and even contractors who are listening, like hiring a good demo guy makes life a lot easier.
Yeah.
Because when you don't, I'm reminded of a job that we did, and they were very frustrated. We were doing some work in their basement, and there was dust everywhere, and I kind of just said, hey, this is just kind of the way it is, right? And since then, obviously, I've learned that's not how it needs to be, right? That's how it is if you're not taking these preventative measures. What is it? Were those things that your grandfather did, or where is it that you kind of said like, hey, I want to really try to like do a clean demo if such a thing exists?
Yeah, so when I was working with my grandpa, we would just, go in with the jackhammers, big bars, and just get it out. There was no worry about the dust. We had to wear, obviously, respirators at that point.
Yeah.
And when I did that work in that brick and mortar store, that's really, they stressed the dust to me. And that's kind of when I came up with just these ideas of, okay, cool, we need to use this air scrubber and keep our vacuum right there sucking in all that dust. So it wasn't until that point when I actually started doing the dustless demo. And I'm sure everyone has their kind of own way of doing it. But we like to, we still like to do it that way. And I've had people ask us, hey, can you take the dust protection stuff off? And I'm like, no, because it also helps us when we're in that enclosed area working, so that we don't have to wear respirators. Or if we are wearing respirators, it's that much less likely we're going to suck in all that dust.
Yeah. Well, because if you haven't kind of set up the containment, then the dust goes everywhere, right? It's like the HEPA filters are set up to, clean kind of a certain area. So the smaller you can keep that area, the better you can control, the dust environment inside that area, right?
Yeah, exactly.
So you, I know you've had some challenges. Obviously, you were married, and unfortunately, that marriage was, ended. Tell me one of the things that's been difficult about, running your own business, managing, your schedule, co-parenting. That's, I don't have children. I have some dogs that I share with an ex. Funny enough, when you don't have kids, you share your dogs because those are your kids. And they're really easy because like, oh, drop them off, or,
Yep.
Kids are a little more difficult, right? Tell me some of the challenges with that, and some of the things that you've done to kind of like, navigate and manage that.
Yeah. So the kids part is definitely the most difficult part for me to just kind of juggle. I mean, it's my number one priority. And the best thing that worked out for me was my parents still lived in Utah at the time when I did get divorced and I was starting my business. So I would, drop my kids off at 6 a.m. to my mom's house, and then I would be, work till 5 o'clock or however late I needed to on site. And there was plenty of times where, I'd get done with the work on site and come home and work till midnight and do it all again.
Yeah. Yep.
I'm very thankful my mom was here, because that's what really helped me navigate that. Now that my kids are older and my business is, 5 years old now, I've been able to, adjust my schedule. I still work the same amount of hours, but I'm able to be a little bit more flexible.
Yeah, that makes sense. Especially when you're starting, it's hard to tell a client like, oh, hey, sorry, I'm not coming in today because I'm watching the kids, right?
Yes.
Um,
Yes.
And, especially in construction, and people be like, huh? What? Are you not taking this serious? Like, this is serious. People are paying us to do this, right?
Yeah.
I admire people who have kids, who run businesses, who've been able to, kind of get past that hurdle. Like you're talking about 5 years in, and you're like, okay, look, I'm a little more flexible. I've got some employees that I can rely on to help out. And then, obviously having somebody who you have a good relationship with, an ex that, you guys can be, complement each other and help out when necessary makes a big difference. So you kind of just fell into the demo side of it. When did you decide to take on the dumpster thing, and how did that come about?
Yeah, it was about 2 years in. It was 22, I believe.
Okay.
And I was, we utilized dump trailers. Sometimes we'd have to rent dumpsters from other companies.
Yeah.
And so, demo and dumpsters goes hand in hand. So
it does.
I had a dream of always getting to that point of having our own roll-off trucks in-house for demo.
Uh-huh.
I never really thought of the aspect of having them for other customers.
Okay.
So I always browse KSL and, looking for good deals, seeing what businesses are for sale, just because I can, I guess.
Yeah.
And I found that business for sale shortly after I got divorced, and I saw the price tag, and, we had accumulated some money, and I was just thinking like, okay, this is a great opportunity. It's kind of just fallen in place.
Especially if you can absorb it and offset that cost with just what you're doing, right? Hey, this is going to make us more profitable. This is going to make us more efficient. Those kind of vertical integrations make it an easier purchase,
yeah,
right? Because you can justify it and say, okay, even if I don't rent these to anybody else, but of course, so you buy this company. And how many dumpsters did you have in trucks?
Yeah, so it came with 2 trucks and 48 dumpsters.
Okay, so a decent amount of dumpsters.
Yeah. Definitely don't want to ever have to have them all back in the yard at once.
Yeah, for sure. And how many do you still have? 48? Have you picked up some more? Where are you guys at with your dumpster count?
Yeah, so we still have 48. One of the trucks, when we bought it, was kind of on its last leg. We put a bunch of money into it. And had since, instead of buying more dumpsters, we decided we need to have a more reliable truck.
Okay.
So last year we purchased another truck, a brand new truck, so that we don't have to worry about those breakdowns.
Yeah. Tell me, so I don't think people really understand, and, hauling off trash for some people kind of feels like an expensive waste. But tell me how much that truck cost.
Yeah, so
because it was brand new. You bought it brand new?
Yep, brand new. It's a 25. It cost more than my first house.
Okay.
It's a $300,000 truck.
Yeah. And see, I think when I remember when you told me that, I was like, geez, that's like, you could go buy your Lambo for that much, right? You could obviously you can only put 2 people in a Lambo, and this truck can carry a lot more than that. But sometimes I don't think people really realize oh, hey, that's a $300,000 vehicle carrying a dumpster that's loaded with 20,000 pounds of construction debris. And you've had that truck now for a little bit. Was that a good decision? Was that kind of a pivotal moment in getting that? That's really helped you guys be more efficient, or what? Kind of talk to me a little bit about that decision.
Yeah, so the biggest thing with that purchase that really helped is with my brother, as my driver. He's thrilled. It's his pride and joy. He's able to hop in that new truck every day. And it also, we have one of the first 2 trucks we got is, we're selling that one now. And then we have this other backup truck. So essentially it's really more of a long-term vision on that, because 5 years from now we'll be able to add another 50 dumpsters and have 2 solid trucks.
Yeah, that makes sense. And how many dumpsters do you typically have out at a time?
So currently right now we have 18 sitting.
Okay.
And, winters, that's pretty typical for winter.
Winter's a little bit slower for everybody in construction, right? I mean, things kind of slow down. People wait for the spring. Do you find you do more new construction or remodel dumpsters?
It's about a 50-50 mix. Most of ours on new builds though are on, bigger custom homes, Park City area, or Holiday. And the remodels, they're great ones because the contractor can utilize that dumpster for the whole project, and they're typically only there 3 months.
Yeah.
So we can move those ones a lot quicker. Whereas the new builds, it could be 2.5 years.
Yeah. There's some new builds out there that, we've got 3-4 year build times on them.
Yeah. Which can be good for the sense of, okay, we know that dumpster's there for that whole span.
Yeah.
But it's also kind of nice to know, okay, maybe if we need to take a little shift, we can get those out to, homeowners and try to churn them a little bit more each month.
Yeah. So how do you advertise to try and get them out to homeowners? Because I mean, I just think of my folks. We're doing a little remodel there, and obviously, if I didn't have your connection, I mean, I'm not sure they would probably just hey, dumpsters online. So do you guys do marketing? Is it mostly just word of mouth?
Yeah, it's all word of mouth right now, and previous clients from the old owner of the company.
Yeah.
And that's been enough to sustain us so far. I do need to start doing a little bit more advertising so that we can start to grow a little bit and maybe add a few more dumpsters.
Yeah. Do you when you bought the company, obviously what you bought was the dumpsters, the assets, and I'm sure the client list.
Yes.
How many people did they have? How many clients? Because if I remember correctly, was it Cody or Corey or?
Yeah, Cody.
Okay. And I knew him before you bought the company. And so I came along with it, but how many of those people have kind of stuck around, and how many of those people, left? And, cause obviously when you're buying a company, that's definitely one of the assets that you're looking at going, and dumpsters kind of seem like a low hanging fruit. That's not really personable. It's not really like I'm ever really talking to the driver. It's like, hey, we need the dump. Come empty one comes back. It's kind of low hanging fruit. Whereas as long as you're showing up in the timely period, like people are probably pretty happy with your dumpster guy.
Yeah, and that's correct. We just have to show up when we say we're going to. And if they call in, we can't wait 3 days. We got to be there the next day.
Yeah.
So that's kind of difficult sometimes in the busy season, but it's definitely manageable most of the time.
Yeah. So if you had a young kid that was, thinking he wanted to do something in construction or wanted to start his own business, what advice would you give to him? Or where's, I know, you feel like, hey, purchasing this company was a pretty pivotal, moment for you and your company's growth. What would you say to somebody who's like kicking the tires thinking, maybe I want to start my own thing? Or what advice would you give them?
Yeah, so I think the number one thing is, be committed to work as much as you can.
Yeah.
Don't ever stop. And when you get kicked down, just keep on getting back up. I think that's the biggest thing. If you stay committed and, do your best, try your best, and you're always trying to take that step forward, I think it'll work out. I think some people get in over their heads when they step into it and they don't realize how much work business owners actually have to do.
Mm-hmm. I had an opportunity to speak to some architect engineering students at Jordan Tech. And, all of them, I don't know, there's 20 some odd kids in the class. And I said, how many of you guys want to be business owners? And, almost all of them raised their hand. And, I said, hey, why do you want to be business owners? Oh, well, I want to have this freedom. I want to have this flexibility. I want to have, and I kind of, I said to them, just so you know, in order to be successful, you're going to work more than you've ever imagined in your entire life. And when your friends are getting off at 5:00, right? And they're like, hey, come to the movie with us. And you're like, I'm an hour away from my house and I still have 2 more stops to make. I'm not going to be home till 8:00 tonight. Right.
Yeah.
Like, that's kind of a reality that I think a lot of people they look at it from the outside and it's, oh, hey, that's awesome. That's what I want to do. And when they see that, they're not seeing, it's kind of like the iceberg, right?
Yep.
You see a little bit, but there's, the huge iceberg down below. As you look back of kind of like, hey, what brought you to this point? And, maybe it's the purchase of the company, or maybe it's, your mom helping out. Or do you feel like there was like a moment where you're like, you know what? I did it and we nailed it. This is kind of catapulted us, and this is a nailed it moment where, hey, if we had not done this, we wouldn't be where we are today.
Yeah, I think I still have yet to hit that point where it's just a huge win.
Yeah.
I try to not celebrate all the little wins, because I think that'll definitely slow momentum.
Yeah, I can see that.
But I do know that the dumpster thing did definitely help us fill our schedule more, in the sense of, that's how me and you got connected.
Yep.
And I have several other contractors that we got connected from that purchase. And that's been able to, so the year before I bought the dumpster company, we had a lot more slow time. And that was kind of like instant, I got the call from you, I remember.
Yep.
And I said, hey, we do demo, this and that. And then we got doing the first work with you, the first few jobs.
Like instantly and kind of infused you with the contacts really more than anything, right? It's like, I'm providing this dumpster service, but hey, by the way, we also have this demo thing that really kind of infused the workload and the number of contacts you had reaching out for that stuff.
Yeah. And that probably was one of the bigger things that did help us. And, being able to utilize the dumpsters on our job has been big too. If we didn't have, if I wasn't doing demo, then I don't think the dumpster company would have made sense for me. Yeah,
that makes sense. When you tend to have a little bit younger guys on your crew, and one of the reasons why the idea of doing this podcast was born is we want to try and drive a younger audience into the trades, into construction, because we're an aging breed. And we're not being replaced by a lot of people. The demand is constantly on the rise, it feels like. And how do you go about finding your guys? Because it does seem like you have a little bit younger guys in construction.
Yeah,
I've been on your crews, I should say.
Yeah, I've been fortunate. I really haven't had to put up an ad for the last year. 2 years ago, I had about 12 guys. I kind of tried to grow a little bit too quickly, I would say. Uh-huh. I scaled back at that point. Fortunately, some of these guys that are still with us were some of the guys I decided to keep at that point.
Okay.
But I've had ads on Indeed, Facebook, KSL, and honestly, it's hit and miss. I mean, it's just people. So you're trying to find the right one, the right fit.
Yeah. And so with your guys, how old would you say, the average age of your guys are?
About 26.
About 26. See, we were on the job the other day and just looking at it, it's like, how old are you? How old are you? And it was like, there was a 41-year-old. And then after him, there was one like 22-year-old or 21-year-old kid. And then everybody was like over 40. So we had electricians, framers, some HVAC guys there. And, going back to like aging out, it does seem like, you're able to capture, a little bit younger group, because, obviously to get into demo, there's not, you're not doing electrical work, you're not doing plumbing, right? You might be capping some lines or disconnecting some wires, but you're not wiring a house, right? So there's a lower entry point to that. Do you think some of your guys will maybe move on to other trades in construction, or have you seen any of them do that?
Yeah, so I have had some guys that have moved on to different trades. One of them, for instance, went to be a plumber.
Okay.
The guys I have currently, who knows what they'll end up doing. I know a few of them are pretty committed, and I take care of them the best I can. Yeah. And I do have, a growth perspective of, hopefully all those guys can turn into foremans one day and have their own crew. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think that would be, because people want to feel like this upward momentum, and the guys that you have are all great. I know you've got a number of Hispanic guys on the crew, and I speak Spanish, and so I'm always, chatting with them a little bit, and I say some things that they think are funny coming from a white guy. And, so it's, but yeah, I mean, that's one thing I appreciate about your guys is, they're hardworking. And I know, a number of clients have commented like, hey, the guys are super respectful. They're, they're not cussing, they're not playing loud music. They're just in there kind of doing their thing and do a clean job of it.
Yeah. And that was one thing I learned working with my dad was, always being clean, but also, watching your mouth. I mean, granted, if I opened my mouth around him, it wasn't good anyways. But, I want the homeowner to feel comfortable and confident in the people that are in her home. Yeah. Because we're the first ones in, and, if we set a bad image from the start, it's only going to be harder on the contractor.
I mean, and that is, you hit the nail on the head, because if that first sub in the door is bad, disrespectful, that makes people feel uncomfortable, it like you said, kind of sets a precedence for the job. As we're kind of winding down here, tell me what some of your goals are, what your growth perspective is like. And maybe it's a revenue perspective, maybe it's a manpower perspective, but you mentioned, hey, we want to add some more dumpsters, and then let our listeners know how they get in touch with you, right? Okay. Go to your website, your phone number. So go ahead and share a couple of those things with us.
Yeah. So we'll start with dumpsters, I guess. I really would like to, be one of the medium-sized companies. When I say that, we have, here in Utah, we have those guys that have 200 plus dumpsters. Yeah. And we have a lot of the guys that are on my level at about 50 dumpsters. And I want to be right there in about the middle, of having about 4 trucks going and about 150, 200 dumpsters. Okay. And I want to be able to grow it into the point to where I can have someone kind of take over and, be the CEO essentially.
Run the day-to-day of it. Yeah.
Yeah. And then kind of following with demo, my goal is to have 3 solid crews. It might be more. And who knows, we could see where that goes. I do want to do the same thing with it, have a CEO in there so that I can I'm not going to stop working by any means. For sure. But I want to be able to step away and, kind of use those instruments to do something else a little bit bigger. Okay. Whether that be construction or, maybe manufacturing, it could be anything.
Yeah. Well, and you've got this good background in, where you've done, kind of the diesel mechanic work. And so I think that, could lend its way into manufacturing. And look, there's the IBS coming up, every winter, and there's always incredible things to see down there. And, so if you haven't had an opportunity, be sure to go down there and check that show out. How do people get in touch with you or find your services to get a bid or to get a quote on a dumpster? How do they get in touch?
Yeah, we currently don't have a website. We are on Facebook and Instagram, I believe. Okay. Just at Faultline Services, also Faultline Dumpsters. And anyone can reach out to me at 801-599-8676.
Perfect. We'll be sure and tag you as well when things come out. But yeah, because I know there's a lot of homeowners, and obviously they're maybe not repeat customers, but there's I think a lot of homeowners that, hey, I need a dumpster. I'm not really sure who to call, right? And then they're calling a waste management where you're being put into like a phone system, and you can't for the life of you actually get a hold of anybody, and you can't order it from them. You got to go online. You got it's a little bit cumbersome, especially for maybe a little bit older generation that's, hey, we just we need to clean up the yard, or we need to empty out the house because the parents passed away or whatnot. So well, Justin, we appreciate it. We know you're busy. We know you got a lot going on your schedule. We appreciate you taking time out of your day to come and visit with us a little bit about demo, about dumpsters. And if any of our listeners need a demo service or a dumpster service, the Faultline and Justin are who you can go to.
Yeah, we'd love to help them. Thank you for having us.